Akabo wa Akatu. This is Daku, and today's survival study question is, should we be educated or trained? I want to get right into it because I got a lot of masters I want to quote from today. And of course I'll share my opinion, which doesn't hold as much weight. So we're going to jump right into this topic today. The first master teacher that we want to draw from is Dr. Naim Akbar, out of his book From Miseducation to Education. He says, "The dog that learns how to bury bones and to hunt more effectively for meat to feed himself and his family, that dog is educated. When that dog learns how to stand on his own two hind legs and wears a dress and dance to music, that dog is simply trained. He is miseducated." He goes on to say that education is a process by which you are more actively capable of manifesting what you are. When you increasingly manifest what somebody else wants you to be, which may or may not be critical to your survival as a life form, you are actually trained. So we need to look and see what our actions and our activity and our work is doing. Is it essential to our own survival, or is it essential to the survival of racism, white supremacy? Alright, so let's go to the next master. It's going to seem like I pulled from the same people, but they're so deep and so knowledgeable. How can I not pull from these teachers? The next book is Who Betrayed the African World Revolution and Other Speeches by Dr. John Henry Clark. Let's see what he has to say about education. He says, "When education is properly done, education opens the door for power. One of the things that we fail to understand is that our oppressor cannot afford to educate us. We live in a society where if we are properly educated, we will not ask for power. We will take power." Dr. John Henry Clark. So, if we're not taking power, if we're constantly finding ourselves asking for power, then that's when you know you've been miseducated. If you're truly educated, you're going to get out there and take the power you want. So, when we want justice, do we ask for it or do we take it? Ask yourself that question. The next master teacher that we want to quote from, in his book, The Destruction of Black Civilization, one of my favorites, as by now you should know, by Dr. Chancellor Williams. Let's see what he says about education. Alright. He says, "The second great tragedy is in the nature of what is called education. It is mainly rote learning, the ability to memorize phrases, concepts, and other required data. Thinking is neither required nor expected. Critical analysis, critical thinking, and evaluation of subject matter are not required, but the ability to absorb and recall is required." So he's basically saying that if you can regurgitate what the white man has taught you, then you can be successful within his system. That's all it's required. He doesn't want you to think or come with your own agenda. He wants you to support his agenda. Again, for those of you that don't know, when I say the white man, I'm talking about the system of racism, white supremacy, which, yes, is made up of white people. Is that every single white person on the planet Earth? Of course not. But every single white person on the planet Earth seeks to, or can, not necessarily does, but can benefit most greatly, more so than anyone else, from the system of racism, white supremacy. Let's go into the next book. Who's the next master we want to quote from today? Dr. Marimba, another one of my favorite books. Yurugu, An African-centered critique of European cultural thought and behavior. And every chance I get, I'll plug this book and tell you that you need to go cop it. You need to get this book. It's a deep book. It'll help explain a lot of things to you. All right, what does she say about education? She says they build institutions based on their needs, which teach the rest of us to think according to their rules. Remember we said rules? That's just another word for laws. So every time we try to work within the confines of the law, learn their law, master their law, we are supporting their system in an indirect way. She says we are educated in their truth. We are trained to accept the system of global white supremacy as truth itself. Dr. Marimba Ani, Yarugu. Alright, let's see what the next teacher has to tell us. This is Baba Zake Kondo in Historical Lies and Myths That Miseducate Black People. Let's see what he has to tell us about education. Alright. He says, the African educator must facilitate inquiries that make students think. Teaching students to think is perhaps the greatest challenge facing the African educator. This is because American society teaches students to believe, not to think. Yet, only thinking students can change the fabric of African life in this society and abroad. The goal is to think. As Ashra Kwesi used to tell us, we need to promote critical, analytical thinking, not regurgitation. Let's see what the great Marcus Garvey has to say. In Message to the People, The Course of African Philosophy, is edited by Dr. Tony Martin. He says, in reading books written by white authors of whatsoever kind, be aware of the fact that they are not written for your particular benefit or for the benefit of your race. They always write from their own point of view and only in the interest of their own race. Never swallow wholly what the white man writes or says without first critically analyzing, there's that term again, critical analytical thinking, critically analyzing it and investigating it. The white man's trick is to deceive other people for his own benefit and profit. Always be on your guard against him in whatsoever he does or says. Never take chances with him. His school books in the elementary and high schools, colleges, and universities are all fixed to suit his own purpose, to put him on top and to keep him on top of other people. Don't trust him. Beware. Beware. What is his education for? To keep him on top. Okay? And to keep him on top of other people. Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad used to tell us that wherever you see the black-white dynamic in the world, you see the white man on top, you see the white woman on top, and you see the black man and black woman on the bottom. Let's see if I can find it, what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has to say about education. He says, there are some efforts to celebrate a so-called Negro History Week. Now it's Negro History Month or Black History Month. And some have even watered it down and said African American History Month. He says, the planning of that week to teach the slave a knowledge of his past is not complete, sufficient, or comprehensive enough to enable his people to learn the true knowledge of themselves. It is important that my people learn the true knowledge of self, as it means their salvation. So, at the core of what you're learning should be a knowledge of self. Now, is learning about Egypt and Ethiopia and Kush in Mali, in Sangay, in old Ghana? Is this going to save you if you just live in the past? No, but it's going to open your eyes to what is possible. And if we could be great 500, 1,000, 3,000, 10,000 years ago, surely we can be great today. Let's see what Walter Rodney has to tell us in How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. Let's see what he has to say about education. Education is crucial in any type of society for the preservation of the lives of its members and the maintenance of the social structure. He goes on to say that the greater portion of education is informal, being acquired by the young from the example and behavior of the elders. Let me read that again. The greater portion of education is informal, being acquired by the young from the example and behaviors of the elders. Now, many of the elders, many of my peers, middle-aged black people and older, say, I don't know what's wrong with these youngins today. What's wrong with the youth? I don't know what we're going to do with them. I'll tell you what's wrong with them. We're what's wrong with them. Walter Rodney, in his book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, is telling you that most of the child's education is going to come from you. So if you're miseducated, if you have a distorted cultural worldview, if you believe that liquor stores and crack and cocaine and dope and prostitution, if you believe that all this is a natural part of your culture, then your kids are going to see what you're doing. Y'all dragging y'all kids to the liquor store with you. So when they grow up, no wonder they think, oh, this is just part of the culture. Let's see what Dr. Ishaka Musa BerrySingle has to say about that very point. Not necessarily about education, but piggybacking on the fact that our kids see us drinking and acting a damn fool, loving hip-hop, Housewives of Atlanta, all these stupid reality shows, and we getting a kick of it, out of it, and they sitting right there looking at the show with us, saying, man, they crazy. And then we go out and act the same damn way in front of our kids as examples. Remember, the greater portion of their education is going to come from your example. Dr. Ishaka Musa BerrySingle said, when the slave was drunk, the slaveholder had no fear that he would escape to the north. It was the sober, thoughtful slave, again, the slave that was thinking, not the slave that was drunk and intoxicated. It was the sober, thoughtful slave who was dangerous and needed to be watched by the slave master. As long as you stay intoxicated, as long as you stay drunk in your ignorance, the white man has nothing to worry about. And that's why he trains you. That's why he educates you or miseducates you in the way that he does. He needs you to be a fool. So if you really want to be free today, if you want a better life for your children, you say, I just need to get more money. No, you need to teach your children to think and not regurgitate, to be educated and not trained. So, should we be educated or trained? I say we need to be educated. Sure, there's certain areas that we need to be trained in. First aid and CPR, for example. That may save somebody's life. But the basic education, as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us, has to be an education where we're learning a knowledge of ourselves. Don't be trained, be educated. This has been Daku Akabo wa Akatu.